Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello friends, I, Assistant Professor Mayur Thakur, welcomes you all from the Chaitanya studio of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University. In today's session, we are going to discuss one of the very famous short story written by Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Swami Narayana, which popularly known as R K Narayan, one of the greatest short story writers that we have. And in today's session, we are going to discuss that short story in very detail. And the title of that short story is none other than The Gateman's Gift. Now, let's look at the contents of today's session. The very first is objectives. Second, we'll discuss about the authors. Then the major themes of the story. Then irony in the story. What kind of style R K Narayan depicted in that story. And last, we'll go for the progress and practice questions, and we'll sum up the session with few questions. Now, let's first look at the objectives, that what we're going to learn from this short story. The first thing that we're going to study is that what is the contribution of R K Narayan. As we all know that R K Narayan is one of the greatest Indian English writer we have in pre-independence era, because if we divide the Indian English literature, we can divide in two sessions. One is post-independence and the second is pre-independence. So, if we look at that, there are three major writers. So, R K Narayan is one of them in that pre-independence era. If you know, you can comment in the comment box. And for a kind information, as we all know that there are three major writers. One is Raja Rao, second is R K Narayan, the third is Mulak Rajanand, the great trial of Indian English literature. And the second phase that starts after the independence, we can say post-independence era, after 1947. So, there are many authors in post-independence era like Anita Desai, Kiran Desai. We have many diaspora authors, also Indian diasporic writers, and many other like Amitav Ghosh. Then we have Kiran Desai. Also we have, and if you look at, there are major writers of pre-independence era. R K Narayan is one of them. The second objective of the session is to know the themes, the characters and symbols presented in this short story. The third is to understand the whole story by taking into consideration various aspects about it and analyze critically. Now, let us see who is R K Narayan actually. Before we begin, let's look at the author. So, this is R K Narayan from 1906 to 2001. So, more than 94 years of huge life he has lived, and he has contributed immensely. Many people, research scholars, academicians has done a wonderful job on his works. Now, before we move, now let's look at the author's contribution. If we see R K Narayan, the view we see he is from South India. So, he belongs to South India. And as we know that in South India, first they write their village name like Rasipuram. So, Rasipuram is actually the name of his village. So, Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Narayan, and originally name is Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Narayan Swamy, who was born on 10th of October 1906 in Madras. Right now we call it Chennai, India. Died in May 13, 2001, and which is known as one of the finest Indian authors of his generation writing in English. Reared by his grandmother, Narayan completed his education in 1930. At the time of, we know what happened in the 1930, the Great Dandi March by Gandhi, led by Gandhiji, and briefly also worked as a teacher before deciding to devote himself as a writer. So, before he start his career as a writer, he was working as a teacher, and then finally he decided that I just want to devote the whole life as a writer. And his first novel, Swami and Friends, which is published in 1935 as an episodic narrative recounting the adventures of a group, a a kind of a group of schoolboys. That book and much of Narayan's later works are set in the fictitious South Indian town of Malgudi. So Malgudi is a kind of a town which is fictitious. So there is no such place called Malgudi, but he has created his own, we can say, own universe in which we find so many Indian characters, and the stories are based on various themes of Indian society. We can easily relate as an Indian. We can easily relate with the novels, with the short story, the kind of themes he depicted in his works. And Narayan also typically portrays the peculiarities of human relationships and and the ironies of Indian daily life, in which modern urban existence clashes with ancient tradition. So there is always, we can say, a conflict between ancient and modern. And the ironies of Indian daily life, and also in which we see modern urban existence clashes with ancient tradition. His style is graceful, marked by genial humor, elegance, and simplicity. Among the best received of Narayan's 34 novels are The English Teacher, 1945, Waiting for the Mahatma, 1955, then the very famous The Guide, which was also adapted by Devanand in 1964, which was originally published in 1958, The Man-Eaters of Malgudi, which was published in 1961, The Vendor of Sweets, that is published in 1967, and The Tiger of Malgudi, which is published in 1983. So all works are a number of short story, and apart from all this, the collections include Lovely Road in 1956, A Horse and Two Gods and Other Stories. So these are collections, or you can say the very famous collection of short story written by R K Narayan. Under the Banyan Tree and Other Stories and The Grandmother's Tale, 1993, in addition to works of non-fiction, chiefly memoirs, he also published short and modern prose versions of two Indian epics, the Ramayana 1972 and the Mahabharata, that is 1978. So as a writer, after working as a teacher and then decided himself to become a writer, he has contributed so and so forth, and so many works. Also, he has won Sahitya Akademi Awards for his works and his outstanding contribution in English literature. And if you look at the story that today we are going to discuss, it is one of the Malgudi days. It is one of the short story of R K Narayan's own universe, which we call Malgudi. So Malgudi, which is a fictitious place. In that place, we are going to discuss that what actually happened in this story, Gateman's Gift. Now let's look at the major themes of the story, that what story is highlighting. If you look at the story, and as we all know, before going forward on the short story, let us discuss briefly that what is short story. So short story is a piece of a writing which only consists of like 20,000 words to 25,000 words, in which we can easily complete in a one sitting, and it is one of the very famous literary form after novel in today's world. So as we have seen since school days, what we have studied in English is most of the short stories that depict, and also it gives some lesson which based, and also it has some object. It objectifies something that which connects reader until the end, which binds reader to finish it off. And when we finish any short story, we got something, or we can say it teaches us something. So in every compulsory English, we also see there are 5 to 6 short stories which is compulsory to read for the sake of reading comprehension, and it really helps students to enhance their reading skills. So in this Gateman's Gift, there are many words, there are new things that you come across while reading this novel, this short story. So let's look at the major themes of this story. In Gateman's Gift by R K Narayan, we have the theme of fear, paralysis, insecurity, suffering, social opinion, pride, and identity. So these are the major themes: fear, paralysis, insecurity, suffering, social opinion, pride, and identity. It is taken from his Malgudi Days collection. The short story is narrated in the third person by an unnamed narrator. And after reading the short story, the reader realizes that Narayan may be exploring the theme of fear. Singh lives in fear of opening the registered letter that has been sent to him. So, crippling is Singh's fear that he believes himself to be going mad. So, Singh, who is the protagonist of the story, who is actually a gateman, a retired gateman. So, he was already worked as a gateman, and right now we call him in also other we call it gatekeeper. So, gateman, gatekeeper, whatever we can use the word. So crippling Singh's fear that he believes himself to be going mad, though the logical thing to do would be to open the letter and discover whether the letter holds good or bad news. Singh isn't able to do this. It is also interesting that Singh loses interest in his clay modeling because of the fear he feels over the letter. This loss of interest is important as it highlights just how overpowering the fear is for Singh. It is also interesting that Singh never thinks about just getting over what may be in the letter if the contents of the letter are of a bad nature. It is as though he would rather not know whether the letter contains good or bad news or anything. If there is anything, if there is a sense of paralysis in the story. And Singh also says that he is unable to move forward as long as he leaves the letter unopened. Rather, he believes himself to be going mad based solely on the opinions of others, which may suggest that Singh may be somewhat insecure about his identity. He doesn't appear to have the strength to trust his own mind and is swayed by social opinion. So he has fear the letter that he received, which he doesn't want to open. He thought that there is some bad news in that letter and he doesn't open it. The fact that some of Singh's clay models are copies of his old work environment may also be important as it suggests that Singh remembers with fondness his time as a gateman. It may also be significant that Singh fears he may have upset his old boss by bringing the models into the pension office when Singh was collecting his pension. So there are some thoughts that coming into his mind that whatever he is doing only because to please his boss, and what he has done that earlier he used to work at some office and he also brings some clay models to his old boss, and which he thinks that he is not happy and he has written and he doesn't want to take that models from him, and that Singh still respect his old boss and doesn't wish to upset him. Singh's respect for his old boss is mirrored by his boss' respect for him, something that is noticeable when the accountant opens the letter for Singh and the reader realizes that Singh's old boss admires all his clay models, admires them so much that he has given him an extra 100 rupees. There is also no doubting that Singh suffers because of his fear throughout the story. So the fear is one of the major themes here, we can say the justifies, because he was in a doubt that what kind of letter I'm getting from my old boss. And when he opens, the accountant, when he opens, then he realized that it is a reward of 100 rupees, that his old boss, the models that he used to make and send to his old boss are really very good. And he was so happy that he sent him an extra 100 rupees as a reward. So, however, the Singh's wife also suffers, and after the letter arrives and remains unopened, she is very careful. So careful that she stays out of Singh's way. And it might also be a case that Narayan is exploring the theme of pride. Singh is proud of his job as a gateman. So he is a very, we can say, an honest and very, we can say, faithful to his boss. While some critics might suggest that his role is at the lower end of the employment scale, Singh doesn't look at things like that. He is happy to be able to be part of something, to have some responsibility and to get paid for it too. The village that Singh makes that reminds him of his father's village also appears to be the one clay model that Singh is so much proud of. It is as though the model of the village is part of Singh's identity, yet he destroys it in a moment of madness, all because of his fear to open the letter. Though it is clear that Singh is not really mad. He does, through stress, do things that would be deemed inappropriate. One of these things is the breaking of the bulb, which results in Singh being arrested, which the reader suspects are out of character for Singh. At no other stage of the story has Singh been in trouble. The end of the story is also interesting as Singh, despite the praises of his boss, gives up making clay models. So at the end, he just gave up the skill that he has of clay modeling. And it's difficult to say for certain as to why this might be, but it is possible that Singh is equating the clay modeling to the madness he went through. However, the reader is aware that the real problem for Singh was the fact that he was afraid to open the letter. Singh believes more in living a structured life than a creative one and appears to associate creativity with madness. So the creativity results in madness. So the creative job, which is called clay modeling, but he doesn't want that job. He just wants to work as a gateman. But when he receives the letter from his boss, and he was so much scared of it that he doesn't want to open that letter because he thought there is some bad news. And at the end, when the accountant opens that letter, then he realizes. But though some critics might suggest that there is a definable link between creativity and madness, it is important to remember that prior to the letter arriving, Singh was happy making clay models because he was really much, it is like a hobby to him. And if anything, Singh's life at the end of the story is still full of fear. No longer is he worried about the letter, instead he is afraid to be creative despite the fact that many people have told him how good he is at clay modeling, which suggests that the paralysis Singh felt when he first received the letter also remains. Singh has retired from his job and is happy to collect his pension every week. But he doesn't appear to do anything else now that he has stopped clay modeling. So, at the end, we can say that he is just done with the passion, the hobby that he has for clay modeling after that incident. Only because of that letter, just later because he has some misunderstanding about that his old boss is not happy with that. But actually, that letter changes everything. Actually, it is a reward. It was just a misunderstanding. So these are some themes that we come across while reading this story, like paralysis, fear, social opinion, pride, identity. So these are the major themes of the story that R K Narayan describes beautifully in this story. Now, let us look at the characters. The characters in the story is Govind Singh, who worked as a gatekeeper. The entire story centers on him. Second major character is the accountant, who opens the registered letter that Singh had received and misunderstood. The accountant tells Singh what the letter says. But by that time, Singh has already become almost a madman, full of fear. Minor characters, which include the manager and Singh's wife. The manager holds a godly status in the story. And also in Singh's life, Singh's plan to gift the clay models to the manager triggers the problem. The letter of appreciation from the manager is mistaken as the letter for stopping his pension. Singh starts thinking that his gifts might have made the manager angry. So the misunderstanding lies here. He thought that his letter, the model that he sent, because his manager is upset because of the model that he sent to him last time, and the manager is angry on him, and ignorance leads to disaster. So that's the thing happened with the Singh. In this story, thus, there are few characters. So these are the few characters in short story we find. In any short story, we hardly find 10 to 15 characters. There are only 3 to 4 characters which are directly going parallelly with each other. Like the story centers around only 2 to 3 people. Just like we have seen in Ruskin Bond's The Eyes Are Not Here. There are only 3 people: the blind girl and the narrator. Only 3, and the passenger who realizes, the narrator, that the girl who was traveling with him was also blind. So there are only 2 to 3 characters that we came across in any short story. Now let's see what is irony in the story. So the irony, a kind of a literary terms that we see in every kind of a tragedy, or we can say in any kind of unpleasant thing. So in this story, it is that Singh's gift, which once used to bring hopes of happier life, turns his life upside down. He wanted to please the manager by gifting him his creations, but that becomes the reason for his own unhappiness and filled his life with an unnecessary fear. The feeling of fear is so severe that Singh, even after knowing that the later was to appreciate his talent, chooses never to do clay modeling again. Thus, it is the biggest irony of Singh's post-retirement life. Now, let's look at the style, what kind of writing style R K Narayan adapted in this story. So these are the things. So only the irony the character of Singh lies is unnecessary fear. He thought the letter that he received from his old manager is concerned with the models that he sent last time, and the manager is angry on him because of that models. So he doesn't open it. But actually it was a reward. So without knowing the reality, he was just misunderstanding the things. But I would say the accountant who is, we can say, they clarify everything at the end of the story. Now, let's look at the style of R K Narayan. So, Narayan's writing technique is unpretentious with a natural element of humor about it. It focused on ordinary people, reminding the reader of next door neighbors, cousins, and the like, thereby providing a greater ability to relate to the topic. Unlike his national contemporaries, he was able to write about the intricacies of Indian society without having to modify his characteristic simplicity to conform to trends and fashions in fiction writing. He also employed the use of nuanced dialogic prose with gentle Tamil overtones based on the nature of his characters. So we find South Indian culture in all his works. Critics have considered Narayan to be the Indian Chekhov. Just like in Russian we have the short story. The origin of the literary genre short story is in Russia. The Nikolai Gogol, the very first short story that we consider in English literature, that is Overcoat by Nikolai Gogol. And the enter Chekhov, one other very famous short story writer of Russian literature. Now, the Indian Chekhov, which is, and also there can be a question that who is known as Indian Chekhov, that is R K Narayan. So the Indian Chekhov, due to the similarities in the writings, the kind of writings both the writers have, that's why R K Narayan is considered as the Indian Chekhov, due to these similarities in the writings, the simplicity and the gentle beauty and humor in tragic situations. Greene considered Narayan, and we all know that who is Graham Greene. So the Graham Greene is one of the British novelists who has written a very beautiful novel called The Power and the Glory, which was published in 1940, and he also helped Narayana to publish his works when Narayana was in England. So Graham Greene has a very good relation with R K Narayan. So Narayan, in the opinion of Graham Greene, considered Narayan to be more similar to Chekhov than any Indian writer. Anthony West of the New Yorker considered Narayan's writings to be the realism variety of Nikolai Gogol. So as we just discussed, that the very first short story which was written by Nikolai Gogol, and which is the title An Overcoat. Now, according to Pulitzer Prize winner Jhumpa Lahiri, so what are the views that other writers have on Narayan's writing is that, as Jhumpa Lahiri says, that Narayan's short stories have the same captivating feeling as his novels, with most of them less than 10 pages long and taking about as many minutes to read. She adds that between the title sentence and the end, Narayan provides the reader something novelists struggle to achieve in hundreds more pages. So this is the beauty of Narayan's writing. So what we see in novels, in what we didn't find, what we as a reader didn't see in 100 pages, R K Narayan just gives us in 10 pages. So in just 10 pages, we just come across the things that other novelists try to struggle with in writing 100 pages of a story. So in 100 more pages, a complete insight to the lives of his characters in just 10 pages. So with a few words, he describes so much. Now, so these are the characteristics and abilities led Lahiri to classify him as belonging to the pantheon of short story geniuses that includes O. Henry, Frank O'Connor, and Flannery O'Connor. Lahiri also compares him to Gaudi Maupassant, one of the very famous French short story writer, for their ability to compress the narrative without losing the story and the common themes of middle class life written with an unyielding and unpitying vision. Critics have noted that Narayan's vision and writings tend to be more descriptive and less analytical. The objective style rooted in a detached spirit, providing for a more authentic and realistic narration. His attitude, coupled with his perception of life, provided a unique ability to fuse characters and actions and an ability to use ordinary events to create a connection in the mind of the reader. A significant contributor to his writing style was his creation of Malgudi, a stereotypical small town where the standard norms of superstition and traditions apply. So, Narayan's writing, the style has often been also compared to that of William Faulkner, one of the very great writer of American English literature, since both their works brought out the humor and energy of ordinary life while displaying compassionate humanism. The similarities also extended to their juxtaposing of the demands of society against the confusion of individuality. Although their approach to subjects was similar, their methods were different. Faulkner was rhetorical and illustrated his points with immense prose, while Narayan was very simple and realistic, capturing the elements of all the same. This element of realism is absolutely evident in Gateman's gift. So what we see is the simplicity, the reality depicted as it is, especially the values and the traditions that he created in that fictitious village of Malgudi. So that's, as a reader, we come across that how just a simple misunderstanding leads to a disaster. He just so much, we can say, the main protagonist, who is Govind Singh, who got so much scared because of that later, that he just left his own passion of clay modeling. So now if you look at, if you want to sum up the session, now let's look at the last thing, which is to check the progress. So these are some questions that can help you in understanding the novel deeply. So try to write this question like, why did Singh not open the letter? So what was the reason? In just very few sentences. So what was the major themes of the story, and how the story ends? So it has a happy ending, because at the end of the story, the whole misunderstandings got clarified by the accountant. And now there is a question given here. There are 4 options that Singh worked as a khali, is as a blank space. So one is A, clerk, B, accountant, C, gateman, or D, officer. So try to find out the answers. And now let's look at the practice questions. Which of the following literary work helps you better understand women and their pains? Now try to find out the answer and try to, if possible, give it in the comment box. You can answer. Now these are the 4 options. The Financial Expert by R K Narayan, 7 Steps in the Sky by Kundinika Kapadia, The Pulley by George Herbert, and the 4th is The Plague by Albert Camus. Now let us sum up the session. The story leaves the reader with questions like why Singh had the fear of opening the letter just because it was a registered letter, why he stopped clay modeling even after getting rewarded for his past creations. To answer such questions, we may say that Singh remained merely the footballer of others' opinions. Singh seemed to be lacking faith in his ability. He became the victim of negative thinking that generated fear in him, which was absolutely without any reason. He could have been self-confident and had faith in what he did. He is responsible for all his suffering. Fear, when beyond limit, thus kills our strength. So at some times when we fear something which is unnecessary and we get so disturbed that it even kills our strength, we get so nervous sometimes that we are not able to focus on the things that we really want to do. So the same case happened with the Singh. So he just got scared from the letter that he received from the old boss. But at the end, which happily, I mean, the clarification is when the clarification is given by the accountant, he feel very happy and he feel relaxed at the end, and the story ends with a happy note. So this was the story by R K Narayan's Gateman script, and we have discussed the major themes and what kind of style R K Narayan adapted in this beautiful short story and piece of work of one of the finest author. And as we considered him as one of the finest author, and also there is a question that who is considered as Indian Chekhov of Indian in Indian English literature, that is R K Narayan. So there are three major writers that we need to keep in mind while studying Indian English literature. First is R K Narayan, second is Raja Rao, and the third, which is very important, that is Block-02 Anand. So these are the major themes, and this was the story of R K Narayan. Try to read. If you read this short story, you will get a very detailed idea about the setting, what kind of Malgudi, the fictitious village that writer has created, which is very beautifully portrayed the southern part of India in his works. So thank you all for joining today's session. We will meet you in the next session. Till then, take care. God bless.
स्वाध्यायः परमं